Good evening again, folks. I was going through the evidence. I do that from time to time. I just sort of skip around a little bit and try to get my bearings. And I noticed a few things that I wanted to discuss with everybody. And one of those things was actually pointed out to me by a fan. And, it's so fucking obvious that I actually got angry with myself for not noticing it earlier. But this fan told me if Teresa Halbach was shot as many times as they claim she was, where are the bullets? Why was only a fragment of a bullet found? Now, this is a very interesting question because had she been shot as many times as they claim that she did and then burned her in the fire pit outside of Stephen Avery's house, there would have been remnants of the bullets in the fire pit along with her remains. And I know this because even the hottest possible bonfire only gets to roughly about 900 degrees. To do the kind of damage to Teresa Halbach's body that was required would take roughly about 1600 degrees over an extended period of time, roughly about 4 hours. Now, here's the thing about that, folks, is the kind of ammunition that the prosecution claims was used on Teresa Halbach is 22 caliber long range bullets, hollow point, and the particular brand that they confiscated from Stephen Avery's residence, they consist of a lead core with a copper casing. Now, lead's melting point is relatively low. It's about 700 degrees, a little less than 700. But copper's melting point is roughly about 1700. So even if the lead would have melted, the copper casings would have still been there had the bonfire been where they disposed of her body. And no matter where they disposed of her body, there still would have been deposits of these metals on the remains. You would have found lumps of lead, lumps of copper, or you would have found residue on the bones themselves. There would have been tool marks on the bones themselves where the bullet had grazed through her rib cage and whatnot. I've been through those pictures of those bones. There is no evidence that that woman was shot at all. And a lot of people will take a look at that fragment of skull, that little piece where that round indentation is, and they'll say, oh, well, but Casey, the piece of her skull shows that she was shot. No, it does not. It does not show that she was shot. She was not shot. That's not how she died. She died from blunt force trauma. Because had that been a bullet hole, if you look, and we'll actually go through these evidence pictures within the next few videos. If you look at the pictures from from Eisner, actually, I think her name is Eisner. Anyway, the entrance wound is roughly about here, and it's actually a pretty straight-in wound, but the exit wound is on the back of the skull in one of the thickest parts of the cranium. How the fuck would a 22 caliber fragment of a bullet exit the thickest part of the skull? That's the whole reason the 22 was the most popular gun used by the mafia, is it doesn't produce exit wounds. It just bounces around in the skull and turns your fucking brain to mush. That bullet would not have come out of her skull. Not to mention that the bullet that they claim had Teresa Halbach's DNA on it didn't have any visible blood. So how in the fuck was that the bullet that came out of her head? It would have been covered in blood and gray matter if that were the case. But a 22 doesn't come out of a skull. It just bounces around. So that's point number one. Point number two that I wanted to bring up was somebody had pointed out to me an article shortly after Teresa Halbach's death, right before Stephen Avery was charged. And it involved Ryan Hilligoss and his stating that he had been staying at Teresa Halbach's house after her murder. What? Why the fuck would would you stay at your ex-girlfriend's house after, like, that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't sound like an ex-boyfriend right there. He said that he was staying there with a friend to keep an eye on things. Didn't she have a fucking roommate? Why the fuck would he need to stay there? That doesn't make any sense. And not only that, but her roommate was Ryan Hilligoss's best friend. That doesn't make any sense here, folks. Huh? I mean, ugh. Now, the last thing that I wanted to discuss with you, and I'm going to have to use my computer to do this, was the reply brief on the alleged multiple executions of a single search warrant. And you will go ahead and I'll leave the link to this in the description portion of this video. And this document is every bit as much as slimy as the Denny motion. And of course, it's slimy because Kratz is the one who prepared it. Now, this is the state reply brief on alleged multiple executions of a single search warrant. The state stands by its original argument in this case. There is no constitutional infirmity. There was no violation of the one warrant, one search principle. The efforts undertaken by law enforcement under the totality of the circumstances were reasonable, and thus the evidence is admissible. Basically what they're saying in this brief, and I'm just going to sum it up real quick, is that because of the size of the Avery property itself, the whole 40-acre salvage yard, that the fact that they took 7 days to execute this search warrant was completely reasonable and completely legal. The problem with that is, folks, is that the reason for a search warrant in the first fucking place is to sort of outline what the cops are looking for and to limit where they can look for it. So say they're looking for a missing person. They can't come in your house and look in your fucking sugar bowl, okay? Because a missing person can't fit in the sugar bowl. You see what I'm saying? So the fact that they basically had this blanket search warrant, which gave them unlimited access to the Avery property for a whole week, is just unprecedented and was, in my opinion, completely unconstitutional. Because what that did is that gave the police ample opportunity to mess with evidence. And not only that, but when you have that many searches, you run the risk of compromising any evidence that could have been there. You see what I'm saying? So the fact that they had this sort of blanket search warrant and then they had to defend this blanket search warrant and they had the absolute gall, the unmitigated gall to defend it in such a slimy, underhanded way is just unnerving to the umpteenth degree. And these two documents, the Denny motion and this particular brief, basically shows you that no matter what evidence came out, Stephen Avery was fucked from the word go. Completely screwed. And these two documents prove it. And how the fuck the Supreme Court of Wisconsin has not taken a look at these two documents and said, whoa, what the fuck? I will never know. It frankly disturbs the ever-loving shit out of me that hasn't been done. Because the state Supreme Court, their job is to uphold the constitutional quality control of any and all trials that take place within the jurisdiction of the state. And for Wisconsin to just go, oh no, it's fine. So you're basically fucking telling me that from here on out, this is how we're running shit? And how the fuck the residents of that state sleep at night knowing that their freedom is in the hands of these people? I will never fucking know. I mean, I personally would have just packed up my shit and lit out of town the second that I realized that. Holy Christ on a cracker. All right, folks, I've got a few more bits of information I got to go through tonight. Don't forget, tomorrow is Coffee with Mama. It starts at 8 a.m. 8 a.m. Mountain Time. That'll be 10 a.m. on the East Coast, 7 a.m. on the West Coast. Thank you all very much for watching. We'll see you soon.